Hello and welcome to the Eurobox. I'm Lenny, and today we're going to speak about Group B. This is episode 2 of the Eurobox. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe. And if you're on streaming platforms, make sure to give a 5-star rating. Today I'm joined by Mathias and Joseph Terry. And we're going to speak about Group B.
So, in Group B of Euro 2024, which will be held in Germany this summer, we have Italy, La Squadra Azzurra, Gli Azzurri, my favorite team, with France. We have La Roja with Spain, Croatia, I forgot their surname, and Albania.
We'll start off by talking about your beloved Italy, Mathias, who are currently missing out Meret, Barella, and Fagioli. But looking at their squad, are there any key outstanding players that you think will stand out in the squad this Euros?
Number 9, Scamacca. I keep on forgetting how you pronounce it. I think it's Scamacca, yeah. The number 9 from Atalanta. Because Italy it's been like, I think, 2-3 years now? I think even more that we didn't have like a proper number 9 that was particularly outstanding, especially since there was Balotelli, there was Immobile, but it wasn't very clear about who was the number 9, compared to England, who have obviously Harry Kane, Giroud, France, who had Giroud, Spain, Morata. So a lot of teams, have a proper number 9 always starting in. Italy was always a bit confusing. And I think that now with, Atalanta winning Europa League, he's been honestly on a tremendous season, so good. And I think Scamacca will do a really, really good Euro. I hope until the end, I hope they will manage to do, a really good result. Hoping it could be actually quite fun if we have a final France-Italy. I think that would be possibly my dream.
For me and Joseph watching the Prem, Scamacca is a player that stands out for us because he came to West Ham a few seasons ago and obviously did not perform to what we thought he would. So, Joseph, would you like to speak more about what you thought about Scamacca?
Really interesting player, Gianluca Scamacca. He was at West Ham. He came in with a high ceiling and a high price tag. And he came out of it not underperforming, but at least not performing to the standard that many players thought a European talent was going to be performing at, potentially at that level, where he was going to be a young player coming in from a solid league. And he came into a West Ham side that desperately needed that attacking chance and that attacking firing almost weapon up front. They needed that threat. And Scamacca did a job in terms of passing, in terms of making choices, but not as much at taking them. And that's what he's learned this year at Atalanta. I think one interesting thing that's going to come out is that there are lots of players in this side that have had pretty good seasons in domestic tournaments and domestic leagues. And it's going to be interesting how that happens because Scamacca came to Atalanta and had much better time of it, truth be told, compared to when he was at West Ham. Although I think given that West Ham squad that there was at that time, they were struggling to find players. I mean, even really good players in that side, like, for example, Saïd Benrahma, they were struggling to get attacking chances. So I don't really put too much blame on Scamacca for the performance he had at West Ham.
Thank you. That was very insightful on Scamacca, who I personally did not think was the best at West Ham, but I've been happy to see his progress in the Atalanta period of his career. A player who stood out in the last Euros for Italy, Federico Chiesa, if I said that correctly. But do you think he's going to be the standout player for this tournament, Mathias?
That's going to be a good question, I think, because he's in Juve, he's at La Juve now, and he's been really good. Obviously, he's been one of the key players, I think, of the Juve team with what's his name, the Serbian attackers. I think you pronounce it Vladinovic. Sorry? Vlahovic. And I think they've been really one of the key players for the attacking of Juve. And I think Chiesa, and same thing goes with Gianluigi Donnarumma, they're the kind of players that they're going to be good with their club, but somehow, God knows how, they managed to be completely different and even better when it comes to the national team. Because in 2021, he was playing at Fiorentina, if I'm not wrong, Federico Chiesa, and he was good. He was genuinely a good player, but no one, I think, even the Italians could have, thought he was going to be one of the best player of the whole tournament. So, yeah, I think I'm looking really forward to see how he's going to be, and he should be one of the key players for striker. Also, Retegui. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, Retegui. I think he's going to be pretty much very important for the attacking of Italy. And the
If I could just jump in there quickly, I think it's a very interesting story you say there about Chiesa. He's got something to prove after what's been a pretty torrid season for Juventus, being defeated by Bologna for second place
your
in
beloved Bologna.
the for third even in the Serie A table. And there are lots of other players in that setup who've got honestly their seasons to prove. I mean, you look at a player like Raspadori, who's been struggling for some game time. Chiesa, we haven't really seen much. Stefan Al-Sharawi's been at a side that's been underperforming at Roma. We haven't really seen much of Jorginho this year. We haven't seen much of Lorenzo Pellegrini at Roma. And also, I mean, the big one is going to be Donnarumma, of course, coming off of the incredibly disappointing and underwhelming Champions League run for Paris Saint-Germain, a run that he was potentially part of.
I think the problem with Donnarumma is that he was recruited when after the US 2021 by PSG, and considering he's 25 now, in 2021 he was like 22. He was 22 years old, and I think he was way too young to go to PSG yet. So he just became really, really, how would you say, he went to a high level a bit too quickly, I think, and we had way too many expectations on him. So again, really key players for Italy. He's been honestly one of the key players for PSG as well, but it's I would say I think Vicario, the Tottenham goalkeeper, he would have a good chance, I think, to battle against Donnarumma. I wouldn't say obviously Donnarumma is going to be number one goalkeeper for Italy during the whole of Europe. But if Vicario starts, honestly, I don't think it would be a bad idea. And same goes for Mere. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, Mere. It's three, honestly, really tremendous goalkeeper, the goalkeeper from Napoli. And it's going to be interesting. Donnarumma has, I think, a lot to prove as well, because as you said, it was a disappointing season in a way. But yeah, should be interesting to see.
Yes, as you previously mentioned, Joseph, your beloved Bologna, only going into the squad with one Bologna player. A lot of the Bologna squad is from different nations. Obviously, Joshua Zirkzee didn't get the call up for Netherlands, but a few other players from Bologna getting the call up for their nations. But for Italy, Calafiori has been called up for Italy. So how do you feel about that?
It's great to see a player from the Rosso Blue make it into Italian squads. It's been a long, long time since we've seen that. Calafiori does deserve the chance to play for Italy. I would have probably sent other players in the squad deserve the chance even more. Joshua Zirkzee stands out. And of course, the other name that would have been on that list for Scotland would have been Ferguson if he hadn't picked up a late knee injury towards the end of the domestic season. Great to see Calafiori in that side. And it's going to be interesting how that changes the dynamic, because he is essentially the only player in that side from a Serie A side that is not from the big teams, not from the big teams like Napoli, Juventus, AC, Internazionale. We're looking at the first player from an outside team as it is. Yes, a few years back, that was Chiesa with Fiorentina, but Fiorentina is still one of the big giants of Italian football in terms of trophies, in terms of prize money. And it's going to be interesting to see how he can change, because one of the key things that stood out has been how that Bologna side, coached by Thiago Motta, has been coached unlike every single side in Italian football. Now, how well is someone like Calafiori going to be able to change his play style to fit into the standard Italian football style of calcio that we're going to see in this summer's Euros? It's going to be really interesting to see how it goes, and I'm really happy to see him in that squad, and I think a deserved recognition of a great season they've had.
Yes, that's a good point, but we won't speak lots about the club football, but there's the Euro box presented by Leny, so we'll speak a little bit about it. What do you think about Thiago Motta's move to Juventus?
I think that this is the best move they could have had, and I am of the opinion that it was always going to happen at some point. And I think it's a great idea for him. I think Thiago Motta is one of the greatest young bright sparks. It's the Euro box, so we won't discuss it too much, but I think he's going to be a big shout for the PSG job in a few years' time, and Bologna have already appointed their replacement, so great to see. And again, I think we might see some of that influence from Thiago Motta's coaching coming into this Italian side.
I'm putting a bet that Thiago Motta might be the Italian coach at one point, I think.
That's a good point.
Also, to come back on the Italian squad, I just realized now, because the coach now is Luciano Spalletti, and in 2021 it was Roberto Mancini, I just realized how much most of the so many Italian players from, the Italian team now are from Napoli. So if Spalletti manages to kind of recreate, I wouldn't say obviously the whole of the Napoli squad that won the Scudetto, but because lots of them were Italians, it shows how much he might even have a bigger chance. Because I saw something this morning that was saying in 2021, Italy was seen as, one of the worst teams in the tournament. They were not prepared. They were getting, out of a non-qualification for the 2018 World Cup, exactly the same scenarios as we have now. They haven't been to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. They've had, let's say, a bit of a difficult qualification period for the Euros. I mean, the scenario seems to be pretty much the same. The team obviously is different because some really key players have left, like Chiellini, Bonucci. But yeah, I mean, we have a thing in Italy that says, during the qualifications, we kind of sleep. We don't play that much. And then as soon as we come to the tournament, whether it's the Euros or the World Cup, we're on fire. So we're going to see on Saturday, I believe, for the first match against Albania. It should be really interesting to see how they're going to get into the tournament, because they're going to start with the easiest team, I would say, out of the three teams they're playing. And then it will be interesting to see how it's going to happen against Spain as the second one and Croatia for the third one.
Very good point. But we'll talk about a few more points before we move on to the other teams. But because the viewers and listeners at home might be thinking this might be the Italy box, but we're not. We're the Euro box. Barella, currently injured, a vital part of that Italy squad.
Definitely.
It could be him missing out on that, maybe the first few games. I don't know how long he's injured for, but him missing out, being injured, how do you think that'll affect the Italy squad?
I don't think it would affect the team that much, because I'm looking at, all the players available for the team. And if, they manage to have a steady midfield with Jorginho, Pellegrini, and Cristante, I believe, will probably be the, beginning starting lineup in the midfield, it should be pretty solid. So obviously Barella is a key midfield, probably one of the best, even probably the best midfield that Italy can have right now. But looking honestly at all the other players, Cristante, Pellegrini, who's done, I think, a really good season with La Roma. So yeah, should be interesting to see.
One of my favorite players from the 2010s, which I grew up watching him, El Shaarawy in that AC Milan squad, which had Balotelli. They had a mixture of lovely players. But he's going in as, I'm surprised to say, the veteran of that squad. So
I'm surprised he's still in. I'm so surprised he's still in. Yeah, and he's only 31. I thought he was older than that.
To be fair, yeah, he was a wonder kid, but I would say similar to Roma. I can reiterate that point. Roma haven't had the best of seasons this season, but he still managed to come in the squad every now and again. So I feel like
obviously we're not going to talk about a specific club, but really quickly, when people say they haven't had the best season, Roma, I think they've had the season they deserve. Obviously they couldn't have gone better, but they've had one of the best players of their history coming into coaching now, and it will slowly come. I think their place for the moment, I would say, is in Europa League. So I think they did pretty much okay. And El Shaarawy with Dybala and what's his name, and Lukaku, they've had a really tremendous season in the attacking. So yeah, it should be interesting, because now that I'm seeing all the ages of the strikers in the Italian national team, obviously he's the oldest, Shaarawy, 31 years old, and all the other ones are like 25, 24, 26, which is technically, quite young compared to him as well. So yeah, it should be interesting to see if his, as you said, veteran mindset will help the team to grow up.
A player that's missing out on the tournament. I follow the Serie A every now and again, but a player that's missing out on the tournament because of an injury, Berardi from the relegated Sassuolo. What do you think about?
thank God he's missing. He's so bad.
That's fair.
I'm joking. No, I'm like, I don't want to be mean or anything, but no, honestly, I remember it was the match against North Macedonia, I believe. Yeah, the one where Italy got knocked out and didn't qualify for World Cup 2022. He missed so many chances at that point, and I think I can't remember exactly when Mancini left from the national team, but I think Spalletti had the intelligent move of not calling him again, and since then, I have the impression he probably ruined all his chances of, getting back into the national team because it was such a disaster.
As a Bologna fan whose mortal enemies are Sassuolo, I am not at all happy to see Sassuolo get relegated. Anyways.
Yes, thank you for the lovely discussion about Italy. We'll now move on to the next team in the group, which we'll speak about who Italy face, Albania, who Joseph put up a lovely point about before we start recording. What was that point?
The point I was going to make is that for Albania, they are essentially a one-man team, with the exception of Hysaj excuse me, in the defense, who's at Lazio, and that one-man team is Armando Broja. Armando Broja is he was at least one of the greatest young sparks coming out of the Chelsea academy a few years ago. He's currently playing at Fulham. I think he's on loan there. I think he's still on contract to Chelsea, and unless I'm wrong on that. But he's had a career that's been just stuck behind others in terms of the injuries he had. He suffered a terrible injury a few years ago in a summer camp in the US, which was quite well known online. And then he's coming back into form. And actually, even though he hasn't been getting too many stand-up performances for Fulham, he's still been in and around the places. So really interesting to see that from him. And it's going to be a bit of a one-man effort from himself, because there are players in that team from other big name sides like Hysaj. However, the other big issue is that a lot of these players are at lower level European sides, with the exception, for example, you look at a player like Quasim Lashin, he's currently at Sparta Prague, and against these sides in what is probably the group of death, it's looking quite difficult. I mean, I hate to say it, I think I'll probably get 0 points out of this qualification campaign.
That's a good point. But looking at the squad, Mathias, you might have a good point about this. Very Italian league core, because you got players from Empoli, you got loads of players from Empoli, 2 players, got Sassuolo players, you got Lecce players, you got an Inter player there. So like a mixture of Italian league players, because would that be useful in their game against Italy, would you say, Mathias?
Oh yeah, definitely, because I think, I'm not going into history, but because, Albania is really close from Italy and they have a big Italian community. Whenever, you want to play, obviously, in a big championship, the Albanian players will definitely go to, Serie B or Serie A. And the mentality that the Italian football has, I think, has definitely been implemented into the Albanian team. So, as you said, there's a lot of players who come from the Italian championship. So they probably, I would say, know a little bit about the, about the Italian football. So I'm going to go the same with Joe. I think they won't manage to get many points, even 0, in the whole group. But if they could potentially have a chance of getting points, which technically I hope not, it would be against Italy. Spain, I think they will have no chances. Croatia, I don't know enough about the Croatian team to really know about it, but the Italian team, because as we said, they have a lot of link between, a lot of players playing in the same championship. They could potentially manage to find ways to stop them, but yeah, in the end, I think overall it's going to be quite difficult for the Albanian team.
Once again, lovely point. But look at that squad. You previously mentioned Joseph Armando Broja. That we bring him up because he has been a player in the past that's stood out as one of the wonder players for Chelsea coming up in their squad.
Is that he's at the point where he's outgrown the Wonder Kid label, and he now needs to grow into that label of being a consistent goal scorer or a consistent producer of assists. And I don't particularly think that this Albania squad is going to be the area of him to help produce those goals that's going to build his stock. For him to do that, I think he probably needs to move into a club to get consistent game time like he's had at Fulham and continue to build forwards. This Albania side is probably a side that's going to be, well, not just lacking experience in terms of international tournaments, but also it is an older squad. Most of the midfield is at least 25 years old, going into the early 30s. I don't think Broach is going to be able to prove his skills fully in this Euro. So I don't really take too much attention to how he's going to perform. As long as he's performing well as an individual, I think we can still keep calling him a bright young talent, even though he's still quite young at 22. He can't be called a wonder kid anymore.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something about the Albanian team really quickly. I think as much as some people think that the preparation matches are not super important, I think they are, because when you have a death group like Italy, Croatia, Spain, and you are an Albanian team and you prepare for the tournament by playing against Liechtenstein and Azerbaijan, as much as I respect these two teams, I don't think that's one of the best way to prepare for a tournament, especially for a group of death. Because Albania both won their matches, 3-0 against Liechtenstein and 3-1 against Azerbaijan. But how do you want to prepare yourself? Obviously, I'm not a huge football analyst, but I'm just wondering, you're going to be playing against three of the biggest teams in Europe, and you're preparing your tournament again by playing against Liechtenstein and Azerbaijan. Like, how logical is that from the Albanian Federation?
That's a very good point. Yeah, that could have impacted Albania's squad going into this tournament. So unfortunately, Mathias had to leave early, but we hope to get on for another episode. So it's just me and Joseph right now, but we'll carry on. We'll speak about Spain. Spain going in with arguably one of the favorites, with a very strong squad. And would you like to tell us more about that, Joseph?
Yes, certainly can, Leny. And they do have possibly the strongest side. Going through the goalkeeping setup, you've got two goalkeepers, that all three that could all potentially start, Ramiro Raya and Unai Simon. In the back line, you've got Leny Carvajal, fresh off of one of his greatest seasons at Real Madrid. You've got Lenormand, Nacho, of course, in Real Madrid setup. Laporte has been doing a great job as well. And Cucurella's got something to prove out for Chelsea setup. In the midfield, you've got the best defensive midfielder in the world, Rodri, potentially the best midfielder in the world, best player. Nico Williams, you've got Pedri as well as the young gun, and up front, you've got Joselu, who's been great as a substitute player a lot of time for Real Madrid this year. Morato's been firing for Atletico. Dani Olmo as well. And also, you've got some names that you don't see very often. Players like Ferran Torres as well, who, of course, has been playing at Barcelona this year. So they've got such a strong squad. And if they can just get this team together, they've got a really good chance of going far.
Spain going into the Euros have, as you said before, a very strong squad. Couple names I want to bring up. Nico Williams, his brother plays for Ghana. He's decided to represent Spain, as he has been a very standout player for Athletic Bilbao, and this season he's had an amazing season with 5 goals, 11 assists, and I'm feeling he could be one of the key players in the Spain squad this Euros. Another player who stand out will always be Rodri, who will bring on Macau in a future episode to talk about Spain, and he has a love for Rodri, and rightfully so. He is probably one of the best player currently in the world right now. With this season standout as CDM, 8 goals and 9 assists is quite impressive, as well as probably being one of the best players technically and defensively in the Premier League right now. And other than that, you got Dani Olmo, lovely player from last Euros. He was very good, and Pedri, of course. And
well, a big omission is going to be no Gavi. Of course, Gavi's been injured for a while now, as he was flat out overplayed for Barcelona. Can you imagine how stacked this Spanish squad would be if Gavi had stayed fit? Of course, Pedri's managed to recover in time, but that's been a Herculean effort to get him to that point.
And other than that, you're looking at a defense that's very strong. We've got Nacho and Carvajal, both integral players to that Real Madrid squad. And you got Grimaldo, a very standout player when it comes to Bayer Leverkusen's undefeated season domestically in the Bundesliga and the DFB Pokal.
Yes, certainly. An absolutely huge player in that setup. Grimaldo has really set himself up to be a great player when it comes to those last-ditch defense moments, and he's been crucial to that Bayer Leverkusen side that's, of course, started on a march, nearly getting an unbeaten season, only one game away in the Europa League final. Grimaldo, great chance, and it's interesting to see because Grimaldo's a new name. You've still got some of the old names still in that squad. Look at a player like Marco Correa, who's had a pretty shocking season at Chelsea. He's managed to make it into the side. So got some interesting squad decisions to make, although I think, as I said, defense line is incredibly strong. Even the lower strength players that might not get games more time, like Nemond, are so great. And I genuinely think it's going to be a real battle for those defensive positions. They've taken, I think it was 8 or 9 defenders with them. They're going to play at least 5 at once in all games.
Croatia going into this tournament, they've for a few tournaments they was considered the underdogs, let's just say. But realistically they're not. They're a very strong squad. They always bring in they bring their Modric, they bring in no, if I'm not wrong, no, he did get the call up this tournament. Perisic got the call up, Kovacic, Brozovic, Kramaric, and so they're looking to bring in that same squad. Josko Guardiola as well. So they're no, you would say, oh, Italy and Spain are going to dominate this group, but that's not the case because Croatia coming in with arguably one of the strongest squads into this tournament.
Arguably, it is. The thing we've all got to remember about this Croatian squad is that it's an older squad, and it's players like Livakovic, Vardiol, who else in the back line? You've got Stanisic as well, who's a younger name.
Sosa.
So, yeah, exactly. It's a younger squad than it was, say, for the 2018 World Cup finals, but it's still a fairly older squad. You've still got players like Domagoj Vida. He's 35. He's in the defensive back line. You're still looking at players like Kovacic probably starting. Brozovic starts. Of course, the big one is probably going to be Luka Modric as well. He's 38. I mean, he performs like he's 28, but he is 38, remember. And this might potentially be the final run we see of them maybe wanting to go for a Euros title. Maybe one more run out of this side in the next World Cup. But this really is coming to the end of that era where we've seen the golden age of Perisic, of Vida, of Kovacic, of Modric, and also in goal, of course, you've got Livakovic there. He's 29. He's been around for the past few years, and I think he's going to keep his place. But it's maybe the end of that golden era. So I'll be interested to see whether or not this Euros is more about giving game time to younger players to get used to that competitive state, to get to the point where they're confident at a Euros crowd to perform well.
There was a lot of argument, especially during 2018, 2016, that Belgium were the golden era squad, as in they had the squad that was the underdogs, but a golden era. But everyone should have been looking at Croatia squads during that time. That was the golden era squad because they came to this tournament. Arguably, people had no expectations for them until they turned up in the 2018 final. Got to the final and beat England. Unfortunately, well, as us being English, we were upset about that, but rightfully so. They were arguably one of the strongest teams in our tournament, and over time carried on that form, getting far into the Euros and in the World Cup. So
yes,
they're looking
certainly
to this tournament.
Certainly, and also compared to Belgium, it's much better use of that golden generation. Belgium used it to flounder and, well, basically failed to make use of it, and Croatia made great use of their golden generation.
Yes, that's true. Now we're going to move on to the games that are happening. We start off with the Spain-Croatia game. How do you feel this game's going to go?
Spain-Croatia, I think this is going to be the game that decides top of the group, which is, of course, important for the seeding in the knockout rounds of last 16. I will go with 2-1 Croatia on this. I think that both sides are going to be quite strong in defence. They have been strong in defence of late, and the Croatian defence led by Vardiol is going to be incredibly, incredibly strong. I think it's going to be a game of lots of chances, though, and I think it's probably going to come down to finishing. I'll maybe give one goal to be scored by Joselu, and then potentially I think I'll go one goal for... Now, this is very interesting because I don't quite know where the Croatian goals are going to come from. Let's say, Kramaric is probably going to pick up one, I think, just off the back of his experience, maybe one. From midfield, honestly, I can see it happening from a player like Kovacic or Modric. Not Modric even, excuse me. I can see that happening. And we see a goal from midfield, maybe even a free kick. I think it's going to be a cagey game. I think both sides will go into it in Berlin thinking this is going to be a game that decides top of the group, because I think both Spain and Croatia, in my opinion, I think they beat Italy.
That's fair. But looking into this game, you look at the last two times that Croatia and Spain played each other. The last game was in the Nations League final. The game before that was in the Euros. So they played each other recently, both in big, big games. So going into the group stages so it could go either way. But if we look at the last two times they played, Spain have come both times victorious. So I would see times have changed. Croatia just coming off a win against Portugal. Could this just be a draw? I feel like it could just end up being a 1-1, 2-2.
But also, though, you are ignoring the fact that Croatia have always been a big tournament team.
Yes,
look at the qualifiers. Look at the qualifiers. Being just getting through on by 4 points against Wales, and at one point losing to Wales in Cardiff. In friendlies before, being pushed by Egypt, for example, but then they kick back into gear whenever it's a tournament, knocked out by one of the best underdog sides in the World Cup, Morocco, and again going really fast to the final of the Nations League. I think they do it on purpose. I think this is them performing on the big stage, and it might be a draw. And if it is a draw, that gives a real cat amongst the pigeons for third place, because if there is a draw, that means there's a really strong chance that potentially Italy or whoever finishes third, may that be any other side in the group, they've got a chance of qualifying as a best third place team, which is huge, because if it's a shutout of wins, there's no chance they're likely getting the third place position or best third place position if they've picked up just one win.
If you look at this group arguably is the group of death.
It is.
This will be the group where the third place team goes through. As in, like,
yes,
that's such a competitive group that most likely will be the case.
I agree. I agree on this. There are groups where third place is going to be more contentious. It might be a shutout, and it might be that you just get 3 points. I think that's the case for other groups. Groups like Group C, for example, that we will talk about on another episode on the channel. I think third place does go out this group and does get into the knockout rounds, and it's going to be super close because it might go down to goal difference for who gets into second. I mean, my initial predictions for this group were Croatia to finish top with 7, Spain to get second with 4, Italy to get 4, and Albania to get 0, marking down to goal difference, which could be super close as to where the seeding finishes. I haven't quite had a look at the bracket yet and the sides of the table. I tried to avoid that because it's all guesswork regardless. But even so, it pays dividends to get second because you'll probably get an easier draw.
I agree. This group feels like the World Cup 2022, Japan, Spain, Germany, and Costa Rica group. Anyone can go through. It's going to end up on the last day, and we could see a surprise. Maybe even a surprise Albania on the last day, win a game and then manage to go through. It could go anyway, this group.
It is. And also just looking at where the games come up for each side. First off, Italy against Albania. Albania are going to have to go into that game needing to get potentially a point out of it to have a chance of getting third. It's their best chance probably of getting points out the whole tournament. So their tournament is in that one game probably. You move into Spain versus Croatia, as we're saying, probably a fight for top of the group. And I'm going to be interested to see how Spain deal with that aging yet also developing Croatian side. Croatia against Albania. Croatia are going to want to put the pressure on Albania in terms of goal difference. And Spain versus Italy is huge because Spain are going to go into that with either lack of confidence or loads of confidence. And Italy have got to respond for the first time in a major tournament that they've been in for 4 years. And then final day, Croatia v Italy. Now that is going to be a hell of a game to watch. And just the way that that's been scheduled in that, well, from first game, it's 9 days, 3 matches in 9 days. Let's talk about the fatigue for all these sides having to deal with 9 games in the space of 3 games in the space of 9 days. It's breakneck football. This is why we all love the Euros, I think.
Yes. Now moving on to Italy versus Albania. Now this could go either 2 ways. Albania pull off a shock, or Italy just go in with, as Mikhail mentioned previously in the last episode, a go mentality. to go in and say this is our tournament to win again.
So, and I think that's gonna be interesting to see how they set the tone for the Italians, because Albania are probably going to be a side that'll be underpowered and maybe lacking experience. And the key thing with this is going to be, are they able to get over that fear? And I don't know if they'll get over that fear too late in the match. We've conceded 2 goals by the time they get over that fear. I think Italy are going to win this fairly comfortably. I think I'll go 2-0 because I'm not expecting Italy in this tournament to be an amazingly high-scoring team. That isn't what I'm expecting. But they've got the quality to get past an Albanian side. And 2-0 is going to be interesting because what we might see is a bit of a goal difference battle with these games against Albania. In that, yes, 3 points are 3 points, but it's actually, can you score more goals in that 3-point win that you've just taken? And that's where I think Italy might fall down here, is I think compared to a Spanish side, I think Spain might put 3 or 4 in Albania. I can't see this Italian side putting 3 or 4 on a side like Albania, who will likely go into the game defending for their lives from minute 1.
Personally, I'm gonna put up my first shock of the tournament. I'm gonna give Albania a 1-0 win. But I'm saying it in like the 85th minute. It's a 0-0. Both teams are trying their hardest. Because Albania go into this tournament with arguably no expectations to possibly, let's try and get the 3rd place to go out of the groups.
So it's the Iceland type deal, you're thinking?
Yeah. So I feel like they could pull off the shock. A 1-0 win against Italy. Maybe a little, if I'm looking through the squad, maybe Armando Broja scores the goal. Or Berisha, depending on who's feeling like it.
Mm-hmm.
Gets it in, gets the win for Albania. So I'm going for a 1-0 Albania win. If not, then it's possible. Then we're going to look at a 2-0, 3-0 Italy win, possibly.
Potentially so. And of course, that's interesting because then after that, Italy have got 2 crunch 6-pointers. And I mean, that's the thing, is that if you're a side like Spain or Croatia, I mean, Croatia have got Albania next up after that. So Croatia can potentially target that first game and then potentially lay off players. For a side like Italy, they've got to go full strength for the next 2 games. And that's going to be a real task for the managing staff.
Yes, I agree. But thank you for listening to the Eurobox. I've been Leny. Thank you for joining me today, Joseph. This is Group B. Make sure to join us for Group C. Make sure to like, subscribe, and if you're listening on streaming platforms, make sure to give us a 5-star rating. I've been Leny. Thank you for listening.